Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Prakash Mirchandani. I serve on the council of the Victoria branch of the Institute and co-head the South Asia program with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Mike Moynard, standing at the back there. Let me begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. Today's seminar, exploring the evolving nature of the Quad as it moves along, is very special as it's our very first collaboration with the Geostrata, with whom our institute just signed an MOU, which is very exciting. And this seminar, hybrid seminar, is in collaboration with them, and two of the speakers on their end are joining us by Zoom from India. The Geostrata is an Indian organization that seeks to increase youth engagement with topical issues from across the world. And it gives me great pleasure to invite Pratyaksh Kumar, president and co-founder, who we met on our study tour to India earlier this year, to say a few opening words. Pratyaksh, over to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and
Yes, and
good evening. I'm
good
Pradesh
evening.
Kumar,
I'm Pradesh
President of
Kumar,
the Geostrata.
President of the
Today,
Geostrata.
it is my great
Today,
honor
it
to
is my
welcome
great
you to
honor
this
to
seminar
welcome you to this
from
seminar
Oceans to
from
Alliances,
Oceans to Alliances,
redefining the Indo-Pacific
redefining the
with the Quad.
Indo-Pacific with the Quad.
Before we go ahead, I want
Before
to
we go ahead,
congratulate
I
the
want
great
to congratulate
AIIA
the great
on its
AIIA
centenary
on its centenary
this year.
this
The
year.
Geostrata is a
The
youth-led think tank
Geostrata is a
which is
youth-led think
dedicated
tank
to
which is
empowering young
dedicated
people
to
in global
empowering young
affairs.
people in global
This event
affairs.
is the
This
first
event
collaboration
is the
with the
first
AIIA
collaboration with
Victoria
the AIIA
signing
Victoria
an MOU.
signing an
Over the past decade, the
Over the
relations
past decade, the
between India and
relations
Australia have
between India and
flourished with
Australia have
remarkable
flourished
milestones.
remarkable
And we
milestones.
held the
And
first
we
bilateral
held the
exercise in
first bilateral
2020.
exercise
And by
in
2020, we've
by
signed
2020.
a landmark
We
logistics
signed
support
logistics
for
support
closer military cooperation.
towards military cooperation.
It was Australia's participation in
Australia's
India
participation in
Malabar
India,
naval exercise in
Malabar naval
2020
exercise in
that brought
2020,
all the four Quad
brought
navies
all the
together.
four Quad navies together.
The Quad, which was
The
revived
Quad,
in
which was
2017,
revived in
held its
2017,
first leader
held
summit
its
in
first leaders
2021,
summit in
which is again a
2021, which
testament
is
to
again
one
a
converging
testament to one
Indo-Pacific vision.
converging Indo-Pacific
But
vision.
what about the Quad and
What
its
about
role?
the Quad and its role?
The Quad has
The
emerged as a
Quad
force of
has
regional
emerged as
growth,
a
but we're
regional
all
group.
aware about the
We're all
numerous
aware
emerging
about the
challenges
numerous
that
challenges
Indo-Pacific as a region
the
is
Pacific
facing.
is
Quad is
facing.
one of the
Quad
foremost solutions
are the
for
foremost
such a
solutions
landscape.
for such a landscape.
Together with Japan,
Together
the United
with
States,
Japan, the
we're
United
strengthening
States,
maritime
strengthening
security, coordinating
security,
climate
coordinating
action, and
climate
harnessing
action,
critical
and
technologies,
harnessing
something that will form the
technologies
bedrock
that
of the
form
coming
the
world order.
bedrock of the coming world.
The alliance of four democracies is delivering tangible results. Now, but where do we come in? At Geostrata, we believe youth must shape Indo-Pacific's future. Initiatives like the Quad Fellowship, they show our nation's commitment to empowering the next generation. By collaborating with the great AIIA, I think we want to provide young people a platform to engage with experts and contribute ideas that inspire them to become architects of a peaceful and prosperous Indo-Pacific. Looking ahead, I think we can co-sponsor youth fellowships, we can launch joint research projects, publications, and hold regular policy dialogues, something that's really important to enrich our partnership and the coming future. The Indo-Pacific challenges are great, and so are the opportunities when partners like us unite. A partnership which blends experience with youth is something that's absolutely the need of the hour. Now, at the end, I would want to congratulate the AIIA on a century of excellence. Here's to a future when the sky is the limit. Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure talking to all of you.
Very quick introduction to your moderator. Manisha Kokar is Project Support Officer at Vic Health with a Master of Public Policy and Management from the University of Melbourne. She has worked across research, policy, and stakeholder engagement with organizations such as the Geostrata, Ronald McDonald Charities, and Invest India. An experienced moderator, she has led discussions at high-level forums engaging with diplomats, policymakers, and experts on international relations and governance, and she will take you through the rest of this evening. Over to you, Manisha.
Thank you, Dr. Mirchandani, and good evening, everyone. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you for the session from Oceans to Alliances, Redefining the Indo-Pacific with the Quad, the very first joint event, I may say, between the Geostrata and the Australian Institute of International Affairs at here in Victoria. This partnership is a reflection of a shared commitment that we want to foster informed dialogue, and we want to create a space for diverse youth and diverse youth voices on the evolving Indo-Pacific strategic landscape. Tonight, we will explore a range of issues that will range from economic cooperation, maritime security, climate security, along with inclusive supply chains, guided by an outstanding panel of experts here with us and online, as you can see. So it's now my absolute honor to introduce the first two speakers for the session. First, we have Dr. Tista Prakash, lecturer at the Australian Catholic University, and her research focuses on regional economic forums, governance, and multilateral cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. Our second speaker, Professor Dr. Gitanjali Sinha Roy, is online with us. She is an assistant professor at the Jindal School of International Affairs, OP Jindal University in India. She brings deep expertise in climate security, maritime policy, and strategic affairs. I would like to start the session by asking the first question to Dr. Tista Prakash, who is here with us. Given that groupings like Indo-Pacific Economic Forum alongside Quad, ASEAN, the New Zealand, we can definitely say that they collectively account for nearly 40% of global GDP. Now, how can such economic arrangements be effectively leveraged to foster regional growth and strengthen multilateralism in the Indo-Pacific region?
Thank you. Or is my mic working? Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Excellent. So it's always careful to. Thank you, everyone. I think I'll start off the answer with a little bit of a background on the Quad and how we understand it. A large part of the Quad, obviously, when you say it, you always think about sort of military and defense. However, that is slowly changing as the Indo-Pacific is sort of the regional architecture of it is changing. A lot of it is now sort of pivoting to a more sort of economic connectivity, a more sort of an economic architecture for the region. And what this implies is that there needs to be a resilient economic system within this region. And primarily, as Manisha said, that it's about 40% of the world's GDP fits in within this region. So economics is really what's going to lay the foundations for the future success of the Quad. And without that, while sort of defense and navy buttress it for now, the future or the longevity of this grouping really relies on how strong and how cohesive they are economically together. And to do that, there's primarily sort of the key initiative is sort of supply chain resilience. And to do that, there is a supply chain resilience sort of initiative, SCRI, that was set up in 2021, primarily between Australia, Japan, and India. Which is sort of a subset of the Quad, but doesn't mean that the Quad isn't involved. But really, the main purpose is to diversify away from China, right? But that isn't to say that that is enough. The Quad needs to present itself as as a partner of choice, not just because it's not China. That's the only way that it will become economically favorable to the region. And with the region, I mean the Pacific Islands, Southeast Asia, for the Quad countries to be seen as economically viable alternatives, they have to do something except say, well, we're not China, right? So this is really what the endeavor of the Quad is in terms of trying to leverage these sort of geoeconomic settings and sort of mapping out supply chain vulnerabilities, whether that's in sort of your automotive parts, rare earth minerals, pharmaceuticals. And once these sort of vulnerabilities are mapped out, figure out how to get the business, so the industry side of things, and the governments to work together, right? Because this cannot happen on one track alone. The governments can't just sit in one room and say, well, we need to get along. They need to have some kind of a partnership with the with industry, with private sort of public-private partnership. And that really is going to be sort of, that's going to allow the Quad to leverage this sort of partnership. I won't go into too much detail. When I do my chat, that's when I'll sort of explain it a little bit. But really, I mean, defense and whether that's naval cooperation or military cooperation, of course, that is the foundation of the Quad. But I think when we look towards the future, right, where the future is in artificial intelligence, it's in critical technology, it's in sort of cybersecurity, the foundations of the next sort of architecture will be laid on who gets to set these new norms, right? Who will set these new tech rules? Who will set these new sort of digital standards? And that is sort of what the Quad can also leverage as they move forward into sort of this new era of geo-economic competition, where tech standards, AI sort of technology, taking the lead in that can only come from sort of norm contestability and norm setting. So that's something that the Quad is also pushing for through its sort of critical tech working group. So just to essentially wrap it up in that, the future is laid, the future steps are in sort of the economics and the networks that it sort of sets within sort of the sort of economic networks. And without that, it maybe not, it won't be a long lasting sort of relationship.
Thank you, Dr. Prakash. I must say, you did a really great job in defining exactly what Quad is. There's so many confusions or so many debates around what the role of Quad, how does it define itself, and what are the critical avenues that it can explore. And just taking inspiration from that, I would like to ask the next question to Professor Gitanjali Sinha Roy. I hope I'm audible, Dr. Roy.
Yes, absolutely, Manisha. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. So my question is around non-traditional security threats, specifically climate-induced maritime disruptions. That has been increasingly central to the Indo-Pacific region's discourse. We already know that Australia has been a leading force in it. But in that regard, how can Quad develop region-specific adaptive mechanisms that are not only anticipatory, but are also inclusive of the small littoral states? Over to you.
Okay, Manisha, thank you so much. So, like I said, it's always important to go back to tradition, okay? I've always believed that your tradition, your roots teach you a lot. So one thing that you mentioned in the question were the small littoral states. I think if Quad really wants to work with the small littoral states, one major thing that they need to do is they need to go back to what were the traditional methods and ways the small littoral states have been functioning, understand and, grab their knowledge. I mean, grab and identify their knowledge, share that knowledge and create a setup where they can amicably work, create that kind of mechanism. The other thing that if I might say this, once Quad is able to identify which particular small, littoral states it wants to work with, whether regionally, I mean, they'll have to do a bifurcation and see which countries they want to work with. Then, they can create a playbook where they can, culminate all the climate-induced maritime complexities, where they can look at the various strategies, they can look at the mechanisms. And, the reason to have this playbook today specifically is for the children, because the future generations need to know. So once this playbook comes into place with the Quad and the regional specific small littoral states, they can create this book and, this book can be send out to the various schools, colleges, community centers, so as to have a very resilient and a very, forward-looking disaster management and, other related activities. That could be that. This way, what will happen is you're going to be equipping the future. You're going to be skilling them. You're going to be teaching them how they have to react in certain ways. The other thing that I think we could work on is, see, India already has the Information Fusion Center in the Indian Ocean, right? And a lot of information goes through and there's a lot of information sharing that happens. If America or the US can also create something of this type in the Pacific and help out the Pacific Island countries, it's going to be a great thing. Australia could do a similar thing. I won't say exactly to the Pacific Islands, but more towards the ASEAN direction and help out ASEAN so that, there is better relations. I mean, there are better relations between ASEAN and Australia. With regard to Japan, they could have a similar setup with regard to the Information Fusion Center. in the East China Sea. And of course, I would not say leave out China and Russia, because obviously then it'll, grab a lot of eyeballs. But this way, create a network where you're looking at information fusion center from a Quad perspective. This way, there can be an extensive exchange of knowledge and prepare all sorts of, regional setups for various kinds of calamities. Another idea which comes to me with regard to the small littoral states is, see, Quad is looking at, resilience in a very big way. If Quad, agrees to come across and come along with other regional powers, it can create a sort of a, resistance database, resilience database. And where in that database, what they can cover is, of course, see, there's a lot of talk about, cables, right? So they can look at subsea cables. They can look at the coral health, because that has drawn a lot of attention. Track the kind of heat waves, track the cyclones, because suddenly we are seeing a lot of, calamity. So these things need a lot of attention. Apart from that, I think what Quad could do with regard to the small littoral states is also develop facilities, look at medical. And I constantly push this, the concept of medical shipping facilities need to be put across in a more, organized, systematic, timely manner. So that's that from me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roy. And the one thing that stands out from your answer, at least to me, is how well you have put in the critical topics that are very important to the small littoral states. And it is indeed a new avenue that we should explore. And you have also raised concerns about multiplicity of issues and the diversified issues that the Quad countries have. And we need to have, like, we cannot do a one single approach for assisting these countries, for developing partnership with these countries. I would like to introduce the next two speakers for our session. So our third speaker, we have him here, Dr. Samuel Bashfield. He's a research fellow and director of security and geopolitics at the Australia-India Institute. He is an expert in maritime security strategy, critical subsea infrastructure, and Indo-Pacific Security Cooperation. Then our fourth speaker here we have online is Dr. Apila Sangatam. She is a non-resident fellow at the Indo-Pacific Studies Center here in Melbourne. Her work focuses on regional value chains, maritime choke points, and the intersection of economic security with strategic autonomy. I would like to ask the first question to Dr. Bashfield, who is here with us. Dr. Bashfield, in the light of growing seabed warfare threats, and here I would like to bring in this instant of Nord Stream sabotage, how can Quad enhance resilience to protect critical subsea infrastructure such as cables and pipelines in the Indo-Pacific region? Over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Manish, for the question, and thanks to AIIA Victoria and Geostrata for having me on this panel. It's nice to still be seen as youth. And I'll be diving into one element of cooperation that's come up. So when it gets to the question, I mean, when Nord Stream pipelines exploded in September 2022, it wasn't just Europe's energy infrastructure, energy security that changed, but it was really our understanding of modern warfare itself. Those explosions that took place demonstrated how seabed infrastructure has become this new frontier of competition today. And as we discuss the Quad's response to these emerging threats, we're really grappling with this new form of warfare that could reshape our security landscape for the years to come. But when it comes to Nord Stream, I mean, it wasn't just an attack on this infrastructure, but it was this new form of warfare taking place on the seabed, targeting seabed critical infrastructure. And even though the investigation is still ongoing, the strategic implications are crystal clear. Now, NATO, of course, described this attack as deliberate and sabotage and warned that, quote, an attack on allies' critical infrastructure would be met with a united and determined response. But more ominously, perhaps, some analysts say that an attack on a gas pipeline today is attack on submarine cables tomorrow. And it's not theoretical in our part of the world either. We've seen cables damaged as part of the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, for example. In June this year, a Chinese ship captain was convicted of damaging Taiwan's cable infrastructure and jailed for 3 years. But unlike Europe's focus on seabed infrastructure protection, as we've talked about, the Indo-Pacific faces another challenge which the Quad is grappling with. And this is really countering China's ambitions to dominate the subsea cable market. And this is something Tista talked about in terms of networks. Chinese firms that lay and install cable networks could give Beijing substantial leverage over regional information flows, raising concerns about data integrity and espionage. Now, the Indo-Pacific really leads the world in new undersea cable projects, but this growth, of course, creates vulnerabilities, and we see critical choke points such as the Malacca Strait and the South China Sea bottlenecks could become digital as well as physical battlegrounds. Recognizing these threats, the Quad has actually established the Quad Partnership for Cable Connectivity and Resilience in 2013. And it's not just another bureaucratic framework, but it really has the potential to be a practical security alliance when it comes to protecting this type of seabed critical infrastructure. And the Quad so far has been relatively pragmatic, focusing on what the four countries can do and can do together. And there really exists a lot of potential for shared infrastructure repair protection. So currently there's around 60 cable repair ships that operate globally. But the Quad could work to collectively pool these resources, lease these ships in collaboration with industry partners. Because when cables are severed, whether accidentally through negligence or malicious action, rapid repair capabilities mean the difference between a brief outage or prolonged digital isolation. The Quad can also work on regional partnership strategy, and indeed it's already working towards this. Quad initiatives should work with local industry partners to address specific regional gaps. This is already taking place in the Pacific to a great extent, with the United States, Australia, and Japan funding undersea cable construction efforts, but it should continue in the Indian Ocean and in partnership with India that isn't happening currently. The third potential area is for advanced monitoring capabilities. And importantly, all four Quad countries are developing the autonomous underwater vehicles that can patrol these cable routes, equipped with sensors and cameras to detect suspicious activity. There's also a range of monitoring that takes place within the cables themselves, even within the fibers. And these systems could provide early warning of potential incidents and sabotage. Europe's focus on resilience and the Indo-Pacific's focus on this connectivity security really need to be combined into more of a holistic strategy in this part of the world. The Quad is really uniquely placed to marry these two approaches, building redundant systems while maintaining strategic flows over data conduits. This means encryption standards, it could mean backup routing, it could mean rapid response capabilities, and ensuring authoritarian powers don't leverage infrastructure dependencies for coercion. I'd identify three priorities for the Quad. The first would be operationalizing some type of repair capacity within the next 12 months. When it comes to the next cable incident, and it will happen, we need assets in position, not procurement strategies. The second is extending partnerships beyond the Quad. So for example, Singapore, South Korea, and other regional players have large equities in this critical infrastructure and technical capabilities that can be leveraged for collective benefit. The third is, of course, to integrate seabed security into broader maritime security frameworks that Quad countries don't do, but could be part of the Quad agenda. So from here in Melbourne or from India, submarine cables connect us to the world, but the Nord Stream incident showed us how quickly that connection can be severed. The Quad partnership regarding cables isn't just about internet access, but about preserving the digital foundations of free societies in an era where seabed warfare is becoming a new frontier of great power competition. And the question isn't whether seabed infrastructure will be targeted again, but is whether we'll be ready when it happens. And the Quad response suggests that we're finally taking this seriously, but I'd argue there's still a lot more that needs to be done.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bashfield. From what you have just mentioned, I cannot help but think that there were three key themes that we looked here. We looked at maritime choke points and maritime security here. We also looked at critical minerals and digital connectivity. And this lead us to explore one of the key pillars of the Quad framework, and that has been critical supply chain resilience that needs to be built by the Quad nations. So my next question will be directed to Dr. Apila online here. Dr. Sangatam, how do you believe the Southeast, the smaller Southeast East Asian nations can contribute to the Quad-led supply chain resilience initiative. And there is a sub-question to that, and that would be, how can we make sure that that regional value chain framework is inclusive and resilient? At the same time, it also strikes the balance between economic pragmatism and also ensures that each of these smaller nations have their strategic autonomy intact. Over to you.
Thank you for the question. Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Thank you, Geostrata and AIIA for this timely event. At the outset, let me establish the geopolitical context in which we are discussing Quad partnership and beyond. While, as we all know, that the Quad ministerial meeting took place just last month, the situation of conflicts in various locations globally have obscured and perhaps sidelines its relevance. So while the foreign ministers meeting did focus on issues of global relevance such as maritime and transnational security, economic partnership and security, and also critical and emerging technology, given the rise of strong leaders and a wave of deep domestic sentiment and inward look, for me, I believe that Quad seems to be at a wave of, Quad seems to be at the crossroad currently. While I certainly doesn't want to sound pessimistic, but pragmatism does trump optimism to some extent. So we have, for example, we have the United States currently, in the context where relationships are being evaluated on the basis of commercial outcomes and deals, not to get into the discussion of tariffs on the one hand, and we have Japan, for example, currently undergoing internal political turmoil while India is trying to reinvigorate time-tested partnerships, while Australia, as you all know, looks at the changes occurring globally. Hence, it is necessary to view Quad's activities in this context, at least in the short term. So I'll be highlighting just three key aspects, which you have already mentioned as well. How does Southeast Asia leverage maritime choke points, critical minerals, and also digital connectivity? As we're all aware of the Strait of Malacca, right? Its importance in global trade. Naturally, Southeast Asian countries like Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia are all important stakeholders due to its proximity to choke points that can disrupt the global economy. Hence, it is important and it is prudent for these nations at the crossroad and the virtue of their centrality in the Indo-Pacific, they have a huge implication on their security as well as global security. So trade in goods and services, both physical and digital, will be deeply impacted by any disruption in the region. Hence, taking a cue from the Quad foreign ministers meeting or the joint statement that was published last month, Southeast Asian nation may join these efforts, including curtailing illicit maritime activity, including piracy, drug trafficking, infringement on border security, IUU fishing, and also joint conversation on maritime legality to advance efforts to uphold maritime order. So when it comes to critical minerals, again, if you have read the joint statement, the Quad joint statement again did discuss about this commitment, right? The commitment to ensure a free, open Indo-Pacific region and to aim for strengthening energy security, cooperation, supply chain resilience for critical minerals, resilient supply chains, and also quality infrastructure projects. So Southeast Asia is a treasure trove to critical minerals. For example, countries like Indonesia. Indonesia dominates global nickel refining, 61% in 2024, and it's projected to rise 74% by 2028. So countries like Philippines, Myanmar, Vietnam, Malaysia, and also Laos carries a substantial reserve and emerging refining capacity. So nickel, as you're aware, is an important element in batteries, and storage is a key element for renewable energy adoption. Malaysia, for example, has experienced rare earth elements processing, offering non-Chinese refining options. So Philippines is a major, for example, countries like Philippines is a major producer of copper, right? Copper and with copper mining market that generates around $548 million. So while rare earths are critical for permanent magnets, which are used in motors, in renewable energy technologies, copper is a crucial element for both renewables as well as use in EVs. So due to the time limit, I'll just talk about how digital connectivity or say emerging critical technologies well the Southeast Asian can leverage through Quad partnership. I would like to address this in 3 points. One, Southeast Asian nations have been key players over the years in semiconductor components ecosystem, both in fabs and in assembly, testing, marketing, and packaging. So these are key components for hardware, and several synergies can be found, especially considering India is currently in the middle of fiscal support being offered by the government of India to create a strong semiconductor ecosystem. So Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam have for so long, they are a key players in this regard. Secondly, Southeast Asia is a region that is a home to a complex web of subsea cable network and is at the crossroad of digital trade and online transaction, which Dr. Samuel has also already mentioned. So hence, any disruption to these cables can have a catastrophic consequences for digital trade and transaction, and it is essential to safeguard them both from physical and cyber threats. So one way to do is harmonization of standards, procedures to adhere to both deployment as well as in maintenance. So for me, I believe that Quad plus ASEAN conversation in this regard will be a key rallying point going forward. The third point that I would like to mention is cybersecurity standards and harmonizations are key element which will be a focus area. For example, if the Quad summit level happens later this year, hence it is a natural corollary from a geopolitical point of view of to extend conversation between Quad plus ASEAN. Just to conclude, I would like to say that Southeast Asian nations hold the cards either through maritime cooperation, maritime security cooperation, value-added critical minerals, and digital integrated infrastructure. They can evolve from resource providers to strategic partnerships, and they can also build a regional supply chain ecosystem that is economically vibrant, securitized, and geopolitically balanced. So for me, I believe that for the Quad, engaging with ASEAN is not just a beneficiary, but a full partner in co-developing this resilient architecture that can transform Indo-Pacific integration into an equitable, stable future for all in the region. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sangatam.